Thank you so much for joining us as a part of your evening for the Chapter Delegate Orientation webinar. You've probably joined us on an APhA-ASP webinar before, but if you have not, just a couple reminders. There are two ways to listen in on to tonight's webinar. You can use your telephone, which is usually the more reliable of the two, or you can listen through your computer by using your mic and speakers. Regardless of the method that you're using, though, please do mute yourself so that we're not picking up your background noise. We're lucky that we've got a lot of us on the call, so it's just very important to make sure we can hear each other. So this is meant to be an interactive session because this is designed to help you get prepared and comfortable serving in your role as chapter delegate in the APhA-ASP House of Delegates. So that said, we want to hear your questions and make sure that we get those answered for you. There are two different ways to ask a question. You can raise your hand and then we will unmute you so that you can ask your question verbally. Or you can also write a written question at any time using the question and answer panel over on the right. So this evening, like I said, we are going to try to get you oriented, acclimated, and informed about everything to do with APhA-ASP House of Delegates. This is a fun process, it's an important process, and we want to make sure we give you the tools to be successful in your role. As a part of this, we're also going to have some poll questions for you this evening. And so Keith, if you wouldn't mind launching this first practice one for us. So we are only a week away from Baltimore. So have you started packing for APhA 2016? We've got a variety of options for you, all the way from no, I haven't even thought about it yet, to totes, I am completely packed and ready to go. So when you can, select your answer choice. I myself fall in the yes, but only a small amount is packed currently. I'll give you a few more seconds to make your selection. All right, let's see the results. Okay, so we have a few eager packers but still need to do some shopping, but most of us just have not gotten around to it yet. No worries. I think we're actually in store for some pretty good weather while we're there, and regardless, we will have our wonderful hosts in Baltimore to make sure that we're all cozy and comfortable. All right, going forward. So as you all have seen, this is the mission statement of APhA-ASP. And to me, one of the most notable parts of this is what I have highlighted here on the screen. And that is to be the collective voice of student pharmacists. To me, the APhA-ASP House of Delegates is truly the culmination of creating that collective voice. And to make sure that we are operating smoothly, efficiently, and that you guys have all of the resources you need, I want to take just a couple minutes to show you what some of the resources we have for you. It is an important process, but there's lots of moving parts in it, so it can be a somewhat complicated process coming into it for the first time. So just for a moment, I want to show you the APhA-ASP House of Delegates webpage. I would just go ahead and bookmark this for for the next couple weeks until we've concluded our final session, because basically everything that you're going to need is on this site. So you can see right here at the top, we've got all of the reports. The resolutions committee are up there currently. There's also a little PowerPoint presentation if you have time to meet with your sometime this week to discuss any of these resolutions prior to showing up. We hope that you've got a lot of your chapter on their way to join us in Baltimore, but for those who weren't able to make it, this is still part of their collective voice, so I would highly encourage you to make some form of communication with the rest of your chapter so that they have an opportunity to join that voice. Take note of these little gray text here. These reports haven't been created yet because they are created on site at annual meeting, but we will upload them here, so just take note where those are going to be, so they'll be there for your reference. Also, this is where you can fill out the credentials form, and you guys have all availed yourselves of the the webinar registration. Thank you. The webinar will be posted. It's already here in the PowerPoint. The audio will be up there soon. And then we've also got the scripts that we're going to go through later on this evening. Other resources: House of Delegates agenda, the new business item form, FarmFlix, election procedures, and then some resources just for you guys so that you can be comfortable in your role, operating in Robert's Rules of Order. There is also one other this overview and glossary of terms. This might actually be helpful also for your chapter members who are going to be in attendance to help kind of demystify some of the inner workings of Robert's Rules. So that's what we're going to do tonight for you guys, but sometimes it's good to also help your chapter members along so that they can get engaged in the House of Delegates as well. Further down, we've got some more documents. These are more the background materials. So all of the things that have where all of the origin of all of our resolutions in the MRMs, and then also our adopted resolutions and the capsule, which outlines our policy process. So as you can see, we've got lots of things here for you. So with that, this is the URL for the APhA-ASP House of Delegates site, or you can just navigate it by going to pharmacists.com, APhA-ASP, policy and advocacy, and then there's a link to the House of Delegates. So with that, so as you can see, important process, and you guys as chapter delegates have an extraordinarily important role to play in this. So as I said, this is the collective voice of our academy, and because each chapter in the nation is represented in our National House of Delegates, but you are the voice of your chapter in this House of Delegates, and so your presence, your engagement is extraordinarily important, not just in the House of Delegates, but also with your chapter. Help facilitate discussion among the chapter before and at annual meeting. We would love to see you in the open hearing on proposed resolutions and new business items. In fact, we'd love to see your whole chapter in there. These are very important opportunities to have your voice being heard. That's part of creating that collective voice. So we hope that we can get that engagement. You will also be the representative of your chapter in submitting desired amendments in any new business items. You are the only one authorized on behalf of your chapter to do those things. And more importantly, have fun, get engaged in the process, and get others engaged with you. So first things first. I showed you where you can sign up as your chapter's delegate. Please do so. This is not only so we know who you are and we can get any information from you, and also we are asking for that form to be submitted online to us by Wednesday, March 2nd. There's that URL again. So we've got another poll question, Keith. We want to know who's in our audience. So how many years have you served as an APhA-ASP chapter delegate in the APhA-ASP House of Delegates? All right, if you'll get those answers in. Okay, we'll see the results. Oh, fantastic. We've got a lot of people serving for the first time as a delegate. And it looks like we've got about a fifth of you who are also serving as a second year. Thank you so much to all of you for stepping up. And we appreciate your enthusiasm. And for those second year ones, please do share your expertise. Okay. So, regardless of whether you have served or not, this is all going to be a little new for all of us. And the reason for that is because the timeline of the APhA-ASP House of Delegates process is going to be different this year. So, starting from Friday, March 4th, that is when new business items are due by 8:30 a.m. on the new business item form. On Saturday, we've got a fairly busy day. We start off with our open hearing on proposed resolutions and new business. Immediately following that, the reference committee will meet and develop its report. And then after that, in the afternoon, we have our first session of the House of Delegates. During this session, we will do many things, among which debate and vote on the proposed resolutions. So you can see that on Saturday, we've got quite a busy day. It is going to be a bit different for all of us compared to last year, but I hope that everyone will be able to participate because it is happening on Saturday and Sunday. So moving into Sunday, we do have our final session of the House of Delegates, and this is where our national officers will be elected. So starting from the top. New APhA-ASP open hearing on proposed resolutions and new business. So this will be from Saturday at 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. This is such a fun session for me because it's the open microphone session. This is where not only can all of the chapter delegates make their comments, their questions, their opinions known, but all student pharmacists, members, and even non-members, anyone in attendance can share their opinion and ask their questions. This is particularly an important session because it is from the comments during this session is the origin of the recommendations of the reference committee. So while this open mic session is going on, the reference committee is going to be taking attentive and diligent notes to make sure that we are getting the strongest resolutions coming into our adopted policy. So please let your voice be heard. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from your chapters. So speaking of the reference committee, this is comprised of the 8 regional members at large and is chaired by the APhA-ASP Speaker of the House. Immediately after the open hearing on proposed resolutions and new business items, we will convene to discuss the comments that were made during that session. From those comments, we will make recommendations to the APhA-ASP House of Delegates. There are 4 potential recommendations that the reference committee will make. They will either move to adopt the resolution, reject the resolution, adopt as amended, or refer the resolution to the National Executive Committee. I'm highlighting this because when you sit to vote in the House of Delegates, you will be voting on the recommendations made by the reference committee. So it's going to be important to take a look at that report. It's going to be available by noon that Saturday. It will be on the website and also on the APhA 2016 meeting app. The structure of the New Business Review Committee is very similar. 8 regional representatives chaired by an ex officio chair, and they will meet in closed session to discuss any comments pertaining to new business items that were made during the open hearing, and they will make similar recommendations if we do indeed have any new business. Similarly, the report will be available on the app and then online. So new business items must be filed by Friday, March 4th at 8:30 Eastern. They can be submitted to me at laurenbodie2016@gmail.com. And then to confirm receipt, please meet us at 7 a.m. on Saturday prior to the open hearing to make sure that we have received it and we have it on our docket. So some ground rules of the APhA-ASP House of Delegates. There must be a chapter delegate present to vote in both sessions of the House of Delegates. Furthermore, only those chapter delegates are allowed to debate and vote on proposed resolutions and new business items in the House of Delegate sessions, making the open hearing all the more important. The alternate delegate can absolutely serve in place of the chapter delegate, but they will need to check in at the credentials table. There is a procedural matter, and that is dictated by the rules of procedure, but also we need to give you an electronic scoring card. So do present for each session to the credentials committee. And as I mentioned, when you're voting in the APhA House of Delegates, you are not directly voting on the resolution, as you may be familiar with in the MRM House of Delegates, for example, or the regional houses. In our National House of Delegates, we are actually voting on the recommendation of the reference committee. So this will happen in the APhA-ASP House of Delegates first session. So this will be Saturday, March 5th from 3 to 5. So delegate registration will begin at 2:15, and we all must be on our seats by 2:55. We will recognize our new chapters. We will hear from our national president. This is also when we will vote on our FarmFlix Video Contest Award winners. And we will also hear from the APhA-ASP standing committees. After that, we will debate and vote on the proposed resolutions in the form of the reference committee recommendations. The final session will take place the following day in the morning. So session begins at 8:30. Delegate registration will begin at 8, and everyone must be in their seats by 8:25. We will continue any business if there's any carrying over from the day before, but primarily we hope to hear from the Government Affairs team, honor our APhA Good Government Student Pharmacist of the Year Award, discuss any new business items that may be presented, and then elect and install our next round of national officers. And then to cap it all off, we will hear from our Kelsey Gallegos, who will be coming in as the national president. What questions do we have about any of the material we've gone over so far? So any questions about the policy process at APhA, any of the resources that are available to you, we welcome those now.
Lauren, your first question is from Daniel Bell. Daniel asks, what exactly constitutes new business?
So the concept of new business is basically anything that is not coming from the resolutions committee. So if you have ever observed the APhA House of Delegates, our big house, they rely a lot on new business. But in general, not that we haven't had new business items that have been very timely and necessary presented in the past, but since we have our MRM policy development process, most of the items that would potentially be addressed as new business actually end up going through the MRMs and will end up getting reflected and worked on by the resolutions committee. However, if there is an emergent topic that absolutely requires our action and attention prior to the fall, it could be something that needs to be addressed as new business. But I will say, typically, in APhA-ASP, from you at MRM, and we'll go from there. But if you do have any questions, absolutely send me an email. Okay, not seeing any more questions coming in, but don't worry, there's many more opportunities to ask a question. So, as you guys are probably familiar with, our House of Delegates operates under Robert's Rules of Order. The purpose of these rules is to promote fairness, orderliness, and respect among all of the individuals in the House so that even when we're in disagreement, a collective voice may be formed. And you'll see this manifested in subtle ways as we go through the particulars of Robert's Rules of Order. So fairness in that we always try to ensure that anyone who wants to speak has that opportunity. Orderliness in that we only discuss one issue or motion at a time. And respect foremost by comments should always be addressed to a chair never to another delegate. There are absolutely times where we are going to be disagreeing, but we should never be disrespecting. So here are some common actions that you may be taking as a chapter delegate in the House of Delegates. And we're going to go through each of these to make sure that you know exactly what you need to do if you need to approach the microphone or propose an amendment, for example. So we've got a handout for you that details this. But these are the basic principles. So approach a microphone and then wait to be acknowledged by the microphone number. When I do acknowledge you, you will say, Madam Speaker, and introduce yourself. Say where you're from, and then tell us whether you're speaking on behalf of your chapter or speaking on behalf of yourself. And then tell us what you're doing up at the mic. So are you rising in support of something, rising in opposition, or one of the other like procedural options that we'll go into over the next few minutes. Regardless, make sure that you follow these steps once you get up to the mic, and then also have a plan. So what I mean by that is know what you're going to say it, and then be done. It's important to be brief only because we want to ensure that everyone who has a chance to speak has that opportunity. And we've got a handout for you that goes into a little more depth with that. So amendments. So amendments are anything that changes the wording of a resolution. If there are any amendments that your chapter would wish to bring, check to make sure that that amendment has not already been made by the reference committee. So check the reference committee report, which will be available by noon. But if it is not, and your chapter still feels like they need to change something about the wording of the resolution, fill out an amendment form and turn it into staff by 2 p.m. Saturday. So 2 p.m. is at the end of the open candidate review and immediately prior to the first House of Delegates session. So that said, you can turn those forms into me. I will be in and around the open candidate review. Or if you have a way to discreetly approach the staff table without disrupting the open candidate review, you can turn the forms in there. I actually also hope that you will attend the open candidate review because it is a great way to get familiar with the candidates who you'll be voting for on Sunday. So hand in those forms before the session. It makes it so much easier to run the House efficiently so that we can spend your time in a valuable and meaningful way while you're in the House. And then I will also mention that amendments are really only truly necessary if they are to change the intent of the resolution. The resolutions that we are proposing to you have been very carefully wordsmithed. And so I would encourage you to only offer an amendment if you feel that there is something conceptually that needs to change to make that resolution a stronger one and one of ultimately more benefit to the Academy. So the language to offer an amendment while you're in the House would be, Madam Speaker, your name, where you're from. I move to suspend House rules for the purpose of an amendment. It will require a second, and this to me is one of the most fun parts of being a chapter delegate is that you get to yell things from your chair. So if you would like to provide the second, yell second from your seat. For the motion to suspend House rules to pass, it requires a 2/3 vote. Once that motion to suspend House rules has passed, then we will debate and vote on the amendment. So this is a part of the process that causes some confusion when we're actually sitting in the room. So I'm going to share with you all a strategy that I used when I was serving as my chapter delegate. So I always just imagine where we are in a stepwise process. So as we said, with Robert's rules, the orderliness part of it is that we only ever talk about one thing at a time. And that sort of makes sense because you can only stand on one step at a time. So when a motion is introduced, and motion just is an issue. So in this case, think of it as the resolution is the motion. If we're going to vote to suspend House rules, then we vote and we step up to talk about the primary amendment. We will then debate and vote on the primary amendment, standing on that second step. And then when we vote, we step back down to the original motion. And so when I'm sitting in the House as a chapter delegate or as the Speaker of the House, in my head, I'm thinking about what step I am on and where I'm going to go next. It's the exact same principle if we were to discuss a secondary amendment. So if we're standing on the primary amendment step, we would have to vote to decide to go talk about a secondary amendment. When we vote, now we're standing on the secondary amendment step, and we will debate and discuss the secondary amendment. Once we've voted on that, that would be stepping back down to the primary amendment, where we will now debate and vote on the primary amendment. And after voting, we will return to vote to discuss and vote on the original motion. So you step up and you step down. You basically vote your way up and vote your way down. So that said, if the amendment passes, you will return to debate and vote on the original resolution as amended. If the amendment does not pass, then you will return to debate on the original wording of the resolution. So I hope that's cleared it up at least some, but don't worry, we've got some more practice for you before our webinar is over this evening. So how do you end debate? And I guess I should also say, when would you want to end debate? So if you feel that as a delegate, we're not making any headway, that we're starting to repeat ourselves, it may be time to call the previous question. This will be done from the microphone. It does require a second, and it will also require a 2/3 vote for the motion to be carried. If that 2/3 vote is attained, then debate will cease immediately and we will immediately proceed to the vote. Other things you can do from the microphone, you can request a caucus if you need to discuss something with your chapter. If you need information or clarification, you say, I rise to a point of information. And to protest rules, if I've done something out of order, then you rise to a point of order. So resources. Please do consider your APhA-ASP regional delegates and policy standing committee members your resources. We would all love to help you make sure that you understand your role and your responsibilities in this position. There's also a Robert's Rules of Order cheat sheet, a House of Delegates guide, and an attendees guide that you saw on the website earlier. So definitely take a look through those. I would also recommend having a digital copy of them on hand, especially if you have a tablet or something that you can bring to the House of Delegates. It's immensely helpful. Okay, so a little review question. Keith, if you wouldn't mind firing up our poll question. So as a chapter delegate, what can you call from your chair? I'll give you a few seconds for it. All right, let's get your answers in. All right, let's see the results. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a split. So to call the previous question, that will have to be done from a microphone. However, for those of you who said division and second, both of those can be called from your chair. So good job, guys. If you ever need to refer back to these, you can also take a look at your Robert's Rules of Order cheat sheet. That's where that information is there. All right, our second question. During which APhA-ASP House of Delegate session will we vote for the PharmFlix Awards? All right, you'll get your answers in. All right, we'll see the answers. Excellent. Yes, we will be voting on those on Saturday, the first session. So make sure you powwow with your chapter and look through those fantastic submissions before casting your votes on Saturday. All right, so at this point, before we go into some of these mock scripts, do we have any questions that we can clear up?
So one of the questions was asked was, give just a quick overview of the resolutions themselves in our policy book and kind of what do they mean, what do we do with the policies once they're passed, how are things implemented kind of on the global level?
Sure, that's a great question. So when we form these resolutions and we put them in our policy book, it's not just for the sake of having it. We actually implement these resolutions. And the committee that's charged with doing so is the Policy Standing Committee. So when the immediately after annual meeting, we're going to install a new Policy Standing Committee, and they are going to be charged with, over the next year, implementing any of the resolutions that we adopt in the 2016 House of Delegates. And actually, I can guarantee that you have seen the effects of some of the prior adopted resolutions. For example, Operation Immunization was originally proposed as a proposed resolution in the House of Delegates. And so any of the resolutions that we pass here will be acted on next year. Furthermore, anything we have in our adopted resolutions, if it's still an active resolution, means that we could still act on it. So this gives us a lot of maneuverability, I guess. So if we, as an academy, as an association, see that there is something that requires our attention and action, if we have an adopted resolution in our toolkit, we can address it. It's a part of the collective voice. It's a part of the collective will of the Academy of Student Pharmacists, which means that we can act on our behalf.
The other question we have here, Lauren, is can you give a quick overview of what happens during the open candidate review? Just a little bit more detail. And should delegates plan on going?
Absolutely. So during the open candidate review, you will see a short video from all of the candidates that they have prepared in advance, just a video of introduction. And then they will be asked one or two questions, a thought question that had been prepared by this year's National Executive Committee. And then also you have the opportunity to ask them questions as an audience member. So it's a great way to get to know your candidates, to see what they're like, what their thoughts are on APhA-ASP's policies and programs. And so I hope I will actually see all of you in your delegate spots in the open candidate review. Especially since you guys are going to be the ones who will cast the final vote. So please do take the time to get to know the candidates. All right. Well, then I'm going to invite some of our student leaders. We have some regional officers and standing committee members who are going to be helping us out with our proposed resolution script. And we will head into that session. We will have more time for questions at the end. So this first one that we are going to go through is a mock script that is going to be very similar to how we address proposed resolutions. Excuse me. Okay, and scene. We will now move on to the APhA-ASP adopted or proposed resolutions. The recommendation of the APhA-ASP Reference Committee is to adopt the resolution. APhA-ASP recommends that pharmacists wear lab coats in a pharmacy practice setting. Is there any debate on the Reference Committee's recommendation? Microphone number 1.
Madam Speaker, my name is Jared Froth from Wingate University. I would like to suspend House rules for the purpose of an amendment.
Does staff have your wording?
Yes.
Please read the resolution with your proposed amendment.
APhA-ASP recommends that only pharmacists wear lab coats in the pharmacy practice setting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Before we vote to suspend House rules, you may state your reasons for the amendment.
My chapter feels that most healthcare professionals wear lab coats in the professional setting, but we want to make sure that our patients can differentiate the technicians and clerks in a pharmacy from the pharmacists for the purpose of directing medication-related questions, so only pharmacists should wear the lab coats.
In order to suspend House rules for the purpose of an amendment, 2/3 majority vote is required. All those in favor of the motion to suspend House rules for the purpose of an amendment, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. Is there any debate on the proposed amendment? Microphone number 2.
Madam Speaker, my name is Mary Bradley from the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. I would like to suspend House rules for the purpose of an amendment.
Because House rules have already been suspended, it's not necessary to suspend the rules again for the purpose of a secondary amendment.
Sorry, Madam Speaker. Then I would like to propose a secondary amendment.
Does staff have your wording?
No.
Please read the resolution with your proposed secondary amendment aloud so that APhA staff can add your wording.
APhA-ASP recommends that only pharmacists and student pharmacists wear lab coats in a pharmacy practice setting.
All right, now that it's on screen, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. You may now state your reasons for the secondary amendment.
My chapter feels that student pharmacists are professionals as well and should carry similar responsibilities as pharmacists, since we are all pharmacists in training. Therefore, we should also be recognized by the distinction of wearing lab coats in our practice settings.
In order to discuss the secondary amendment, a majority vote is needed. All those in favor of opening discussion on the secondary amendment, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please signify so by saying nay. Okay, the ayes have it. Is there any debate on the secondary amendment? Microphone 3.
Madam Speaker, I'm concerned about...
Excuse me, microphone 3. Could you please state your name and school and college of pharmacy?
I apologize, Madam Speaker. Adrienne Simmons from Virginia Commonwealth University. I think that we should wear these coats in the pharmacy, but I don't wear a lab coat like I wore in chemistry lab. I want to clarify that these are the professional white coats. Therefore, I'd like to suspend House rules for the purpose of an amendment.
I'm sorry, that motion is out of order. There are already 2 amendments on the floor. We must first address the amendments pending. However, you may propose an amendment after these motions have been addressed. Is there any further discussion regarding the statement on the screen? All right, seeing none, we will now vote on the secondary amendment as seen on the screen, which reads, APhA-ASP recommends that only pharmacists and student pharmacists wear lab coats in a pharmacy practice setting. All those in favor of the addition of the wording and student pharmacists, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. The secondary amendment has been adopted. We will now return to the discussion on the primary amendment, which now reads, APhA-ASP recommends that only pharmacists and student pharmacists wear lab coats in a pharmacy practice setting. Debate. Seeing none, all those in favor of the primary amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. We will now be discussing the Reference Committee's recommendation to adopt the resolution. APhA-ASP recommends that only pharmacists and student pharmacists wear lab coats in a pharmacy practice setting. Is there any further debate? Microphone number 3.
Madam Speaker, Adrian Simmons from Virginia Commonwealth University. I would like to suspend House rules for the purpose of an amendment.
Does staff have your wording?
Yes.
Please read the resolution with your proposed amendment.
APhA-ASP recommends that only pharmacists and student pharmacists wear white coats in a pharmacy practice setting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Before we vote to suspend House rules, you may state your reasons for the amendment.
My chapter feels that these coats should be specified as the professional type white coats, not the lab coats that many of us wore in chemistry labs in the past.
Madam Speaker.
Point of order. Chapter Delegate, you must first be recognized by the speaker before beginning to speak. Microphone number 1.
I apologize, Madam Speaker. Jared Frow from Wingate University. I would like to request a caucus to discuss this with my chapter.
I'm sorry, that motion to request a caucus is out of order at this time. We first need to vote on whether or not to suspend House rules for the purpose of an amendment. If House rules are suspended, the floor will be open for debate. After all delegates have had the opportunity to speak on this issue, a caucus will be granted if still necessary. In order to suspend House rules for the purpose of an amendment, 2/3 majority vote is required. All those in favor of the motion to suspend House rules for the purpose of an amendment, please signify so by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Microphone number 2.
Madam Speaker, Mary Bradley from the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. I actually think that this amendment is a really valid point, and my chapter is in support of this.
Thank you. Is there any further debate? Microphone number 1.
Madam Speaker, Jared Frow from Wingate University. I would like to request a caucus to discuss this with my chapter.
I will grant a 2-minute caucus. Delegates, please return to your seats when you have finished discussing. So when a caucus is granted, depending on the length of time that's available to us, we will grant the caucus. But please do, be efficient in your use of time discussing with your chapter and return to your seats in a quick manner. All right, the House will now come to order. Is there any further debate on the proposed amendment? Seeing none, we will now vote on the proposed amendment. All those in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
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 The ayes have it.
Division.
A division has been called. Please vote using your electronic devices. All those in favor of the proposed amendment, press 1. And all those opposed to the proposed amendment, press 2. Delegates, you have 15 seconds to vote. 5 seconds. All right, voting is now closed. The amendment passes. We will now be discussing the Reference Committee's recommendation to adopt the resolution. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we will now vote on the recommendation to adopt the resolution. All those in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. All right. Thank you, guys. What questions do we have about this mock script?
First question is just to clarify something. A delegate can request an amendment on a resolution presented by a different chapter. So if it's not your resolution, can you do that?
Well, so I understand that if you may have participated in the MRM Regional House of Delegates. So in this case, all of the proposed resolutions are coming from the Resolutions Committee, which is comprised of your 8 regional delegates. They have crafted these resolutions and they will be submitted to the House's business. When you're actually voting on in the House of Delegates, what you're voting on is the recommendation of the Reference Committee. And those recommendations are based on comments during the open hearing. and they will either recommend to adopt the resolution, reject the resolution, adopt it as amended, or refer it to a committee. So when you're sitting there as a delegate, you are basically asking yourself, does my chapter agree with the recommendation that was proposed in the reference committee report? So let's say that the reference committee recommended adopting the resolution. If your chapter also thinks that the resolution should be adopted, you will vote aye. If your chapter thinks, if the reference committee recommends adopting the resolution, but your chapter thinks that something needs to be changed in it, then that is when you would offer an amendment. All right. For the time being, let's move on to our next mock.
One more question here related to the procedures in the House. Can you just tell us the best way to ask for a caucus?
Sure. So requesting a caucus does need to be done from the mic. So basically, you can request a caucus at any point before we're about to vote on the resolution. So Jared was out of order in the script because he was asking for a caucus when we were only voting on whether we were going to suspend House rules. Jared would have been allowed to ask for a caucus if it had been during the discussion about the amendment itself. If Jared felt that he needed to discuss with his chapter whether they were for the amendment or against it, then that is when you would ask for a caucus. And then in terms of like the actual mechanics of it, it would be Madam Speaker, Scott Brewster from East Tennessee State University. I would like to request a caucus with my chapter. All right, Keith, any other questions coming in?
No, I don't see any now. You can move on to the elections.
Okay. So as mentioned before, in the final session of the APhA-ASP House of Delegates, we will elect the 2016-2017 National Executive Committee. This consists of a national president-elect, 2 members at large, and the national speaker of the House. There are many opportunities to learn about these candidates, and I hope that you will avail yourselves of the opportunity to do so. There are statements posted online. There are also 2 meet the candidate sessions, the open candidate review, which we had spoken about some earlier, and then each candidate who is either slated or nominated from the floor will have the opportunity to address the House of Delegates. In casting your vote for these elections, it should be a chapter decision, so please seek feedback from your other chapter members. There is a committee called the Nominating Committee with representatives from each of the 8 APhA-ASP regions who will determine the slate. The slate consists of 2 candidates for National President-elect, 4 for National Member-at-Large, and 2 for the Speaker of the House. The report of the Nominating Committee will be available by Saturday evening at 10 p.m. via, again, the meeting app and the House of Delegates webpage. So if you are planning on nominating someone from the floor, it would be, Madam Speaker, your name and your chapter. I would like to nominate the candidate for the office of whichever they are seeking. This does require a second, and it does require a majority vote of the delegates. The voting process is a sequential process seeking to achieve a majority vote required for an election. So if on the first ballot no candidate receives a majority, then the name of the candidate with the least number of votes will be dropped heading into the second ballot. The same is true for the second ballot. If at the end of the third ballot there is still no majority, then the election shall be decided by a plurality. So not if more than 50% cannot be attained, then whoever achieves the most. In the case of a tie, the APhA-ASP Speaker of the House casts the deciding vote. With the national members at large, it's the same procedure, except that you are electing 2 positions, but still a maximum of 3 ballots, seeking a majority or failing that, a plurality. All right, let's head into our national election script. Okay. We will now move on to the APhA-ASP National Officer Elections. The House is prepared to receive the report of the nominating committee for the office of the 2016-2017 APhA-ASP National President-elect.
Madam Speaker, the nominating committee has slated the following 2 individuals for the office of APhA-ASP National President-elect, Kelsey Gallegos and Lucy West.
The House has heard the report of the APhA-ASP nominating committee for the position of the 2016-2017 APhA-ASP National President-elect. Because this slate came from committee, there is no second required. Nominations from the floor can be taken if the candidate has complied with all of the requirements outlined in the APhA-ASP House of Delegates Rules of Procedure. That being said, are there any nominations from the floor for the office of APhA-ASP National President-elect? Microphone number 2.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Kevin Mai from Western University of Health Sciences. I would like to nominate Annie Stella for the office of APhA-ASP National President-elect.
Ms. Stella, do you accept the nomination for APhA-ASP National President-elect?
I accept, Madam Speaker.
Ms. Stella has accepted the nomination for the office of National President-elect. Is there a second?
Second.
We will now vote to place Ms. Stella on the ballot for the office of National President-elect. All those in favor of placing Ms. Stella on the ballot, please signify so by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. Ms. Stella will now be a candidate for the office of National President-elect. Are there any further nominations? Microphone number 3.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Jason Gaines from Mercer University, and I would like to nominate Jared Fry for the office of National President-elect.
Mr. Fry, do you accept the nomination for National President-elect?
I accept, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Fry has accepted the nomination for the office of National President-elect. Is there a second?
Second.
We will now vote to place Mr. Fry on the ballot for the office of National President-elect. All those in favor of placing Mr. Fry on the ballot, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, signify by saying nay.
Nay.
The nays have it. Mr. Fry will not be placed on the ballot as a candidate for the office of National President-elect. Are there any further nominations? Seeing none, nominations for the office of APhA-ASP National President-elect are closed. Each candidate may address the delegates for a period of time not to exceed 4 minutes. Candidates will address the House in the following order. First, those slated by the nominating committee in alphabetical order, followed by the nominations from the floor in the order in which they were nominated. So the candidates for the office of APhA-ASP National President-elect, Kelsey Gallegos, Lucy Ann West, and Annie Stella. At this point, each of the candidates will address the House. And after all the candidates have had a chance to speak, I will now grant a 5-minute caucus to discuss the candidates. So delegates, you will use this time to caucus with your chapter and come to a decision regarding how you would like to vote. So as we come back, will the House please come to order? It is time to vote for the office of APhA-ASP National President-elect. Remember, delegates, please submit your electronic ballot by entering only one number on your electronic keypad that corresponds to the candidate listed on the screen. Five seconds. Have all the votes been cast? All right, voting for the office of National President-elect is now closed. A majority vote shall be required for the office of National President-elect. At this point, we will verify, the APhA staff will verify the ballot. And if a majority has been achieved, then we are done voting. If a majority has not been achieved, we will drop the lowest name and head on to the next ballot for a total of 3 ballots. At that point, a candidate has been chosen for the office of National President-elect. We will now move on to the office of National Member-at-Large. And so we will proceed through National Member-at-Large, followed by Speaker of the House. After a candidate has been chosen for all 3 offices, we will announce who will be serving as our next NEC. Questions at this point?
So we have one question from a Michael Carulli. He has his hand raised, so I'm going to unmute him in 1 second here. Michael, you're unmuted. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Lauren. I just had a quick question about slating. I just wanted to know, is there a reason for the committee to slate the candidates versus just letting all of them run? Because I noticed last year everyone that was running that wasn't slated ended up just getting nominated from the floor anyways.
So you are right that, it is the candidates who are not slated do have the opportunity to be nominated from the floor. I think I have to appeal to Keith Marciniak for the historical perspective on why this was codified in our House of Delegates Rules of Procedure. Keith?
Sure. So we went through a rules revision in the early part of the 2000s to take a look at the growing number of candidates that we had for each of the positions. We have 23 candidates this year, which is, I think, the second highest total that we've ever had. And so the nominating committee process has always existed, but we wanted an opportunity for the House of Delegates to kind of narrow down the number of candidates. Everybody gets 4 minutes to speak, so if you do the math, 4 times 23, it gets to be pretty long. And we trust that the nominating committee is a representative from one person from every region, as well as last year's national president, as well as a chair of the committee, that they're interviewing the candidates and kind of meeting with them one-on-one, and they're putting forward the best number of candidates. And so, like the APhA House, they only have a couple candidates for each of the positions, and the House doesn't have the opportunity for, say, the Board of Trustee members to allow them to kind of give their speech or be put back on the ballot. APhA-ASP does that, and it's just kind of one of those rules of procedure type things. It's one of those things that's just part of the House rules. If you'd like to make an amendment to the House rules, you can definitely propose that to the National Executive Committee, and they can address it. It would have to actually be next year's House session. But does that help, Michael?
Yeah, definitely. I just always never understood why, so that makes a lot more sense now. So thank you for that explanation. I also did have one more question. I had my hand raised before,
Sure.
but it wasn't noticed, I guess. It was about just general Roberts rules. I just wanted to know what situations denote the need to suspend House rules. So I saw that it was for an amendment. What else would that be needed for?
So for our purposes, really, that's kind of the only thing that we ever need to suspend House rules for. And it's really just more because an amendment isn't on our official agenda. It hasn't been proposed as business to the House. So we have to go through a process to make it the business of the House. And so to do that, we have to actually bypass our House rules. And so that's why we vote to suspend them, so that we can we can bring this motion to the House.
Awesome. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you for that.
Yeah, just to add into there, it's one of those Roberts Rules procedural things that it kind of puts a pause on everything that's currently happening. I actually prefer the way that we do it in the student house as opposed to the big house. Anybody can just get up to the microphone. Anybody can stop the debate and say, I'd like to make an amendment, and then you have to immediately address that amendment and start talking about and debating the amendment. Whereas in the student house, you actually physically have to stop the debate. You have to vote on it. 2/3 of everybody in the House has to agree to stop debate and then go into this portion of the debate that we're going to talk about the amendment. And you'd be surprised. I mean, you get the sense and you get kind of the feel of the House kind of midway through to see, how students are feeling about an issue, whether they're opposed or in favor of it. And so it actually helps increase the efficiency and increase the flow of the House by having to stop the debate there and basically suspend the rules. There's a lot of little procedural things if you want to, dive into Robert's rules that you would have to kind of, suspend the rules to do certain things. But for our purposes, the amendment is really the only one. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, guys.
And to me, I see the suspending House rules, and in particular the fact that it requires a 2/3 vote, as one of the manifestations of fairness that's ingrained in Robert's Rules of Order, because it's kind of representing that to cut off debate, to disrupt the House, it requires a more than a majority to allow someone to do that. There has to really be the will of the House for that to take place. So I too like the way we do it in the Student House.
Great, thank you.
All right. Michael, I'm going to have you mute yourself back again as opposed to me doing it. We have another question from Angela Marcella. Angela, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Alrighty, I actually have two questions. One has to do with the open candidate session. If your delegate is running for office, should you have your alternate delegate prepared to come in for that, or is all chapter members welcome to the open candidate session?
So everyone is welcome to come to the open candidate review. But so I would definitely say to that, yes, everyone should come. But yes, in particular, the alternate delegate should come as well, since I imagine that they will be acting as the delegate during the elections portion of the final House of Delegates.
If they...
Let me just add on to that real quick, Angela. So we're doing things a little differently this year. We're normally not in the same room that we're going to have the House session as well as our open hearing, as well as our open candidate review. So when we start the open hearing at 12:30, your credentials committee, as well as your regional officers, will have already set up the House of Delegates. So we encourage, and also at that time, we're going to have a copy of the new business as well as the reference committee's report sitting at the seats. So we encourage the delegates to go ahead and just sit in the House at the place card where your school's name is listed. We really want you to participate and really be part of that open candidate review. It'll also give you a little time if you're looking at the policies to maybe take one of the amendment forms and start writing up any amendments that you'd like to have at that time. So, sorry, Angela, go ahead.
Oh, and then as far as when it comes to the final session, the final House session where we will be voting, if, for instance, our delegate was not slated and required a nomination from the floor, if they are serving as the delegate in that final session, are they allowed to slate themselves from the floor?
So Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but at that point the alternate delegate should probably be serving as the chapter delegate if the chapter delegate is running.
Yeah, there's nothing that I can think of procedurally that would make that person who's the delegate and who's the candidate the same person ineligible for, getting up to the microphone and nominating themselves from the floor. But it probably would be good for the candidate themselves to not have to go up and do that. They probably would want to focus on their speech and making sure that they really nail that and that they're doing that sort of thing. So there's a lot that's going on Sunday morning for each of those candidates. So it'd probably be best that the alternate sat in during that session.
I can actually almost guarantee that the candidate is not going to want to be serving as the delegate currently, having been there myself. And also there is the matter of the candidate not necessarily like listening to, or sorry, speaking of the open candidate review or the, so they definitely couldn't be in the session for the open candidate review, but I can guarantee that in terms of the final session when they're about to give their speech, that's what they're going to want to be focusing on.
And just to clarify that for Lauren, we hold all of the candidates during the open candidate review. We hold them in a small room together and we force them to talk to each other. And we take away their phone. We take away any form of technology that they can use to either communicate to each other or they can receive communications from fellow chapter members or members from their region. So we kind of bring each of the candidates in during the open candidate review while their video is playing. We bring them up on stage and we ask each set of officers a different question for each office, but it's the same question for President-elect, same question for a member at large as well as Speaker of the House, so that you have something to compare to. And we don't want them to hear what that question is. So they can only be up there during their portion and then they have to leave and they can't come back. So your delegate wouldn't be able to go to that.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
All right, what other questions do you have?
That was all the questions for me.
Okay. All right, I'm not seeing any additional questions coming in or any hands raised. So I will go ahead and head on just kind of to general questions about any of our policy and advocacy programming as we're closing up the year. So I will bring to your attention that both the policy postcard challenge totals and the Back the PAC campaign submission forms are due by March 1st. So in terms of the policy postcard challenge, we've got a form site up on the website for you to just be able to electronically submit your totals. We will recognize your efforts at the annual meeting. And for the Back the PAC campaign, so as you guys are probably familiar with, there's any number of ways that you can contribute to the Back the PAC campaign. It could be through the online donation tool, the text to donate application. In those cases, as long as the person who has made the donation has selected the chapter, those are automatically going to be compiled for your chapter. However, if you hold a Back the PAC campaign event like at your school and you're sending in a check, what we're asking you to do is mail the check with a copy of the form, but also prior to March 1st, email that electronic copy of the form to Lauren DePuter, whose email address is on the form itself. So that's just to make sure that we could get that submission counted for you, and so that's reflected in the totals when we recognize our Back the PAC campaign winners. As I said before, chapter delegate registration is due March 2nd. We also would love to see you at the student advocacy reception, which is March 6th, prior to the awards celebration. This is going to be a new event that we're hosting this year. It's specifically tailored to students, and it is going to be a very casual but fun way to interact with the government affairs staff and also help raise money for the PAC. We will be selling tickets that entitle you to an APhA PAC cup and also 2 tickets to partake of a beverage. You can purchase tickets online in advance, but we will also have someone on site if you would like to purchase a ticket at the spur of the moment. APhA-ASP new business items are due March 4th at 8:30 a.m. Email those to me, please, and we will get those on our agenda. Also, just take a look at the online annual meeting information and also the app. Start planning your sessions. And as a note, the registration for APhA Institute on Alcoholism and Drug Dependencies, this is our meeting that is held annually in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's a fantastic meeting, and I encourage everyone to publicize it to their chapters and consider going themselves. It was an incredibly impactful meeting, and definitely something as a student pharmacist that it is good to be well versed in. So I welcome your questions about any of the topics we've discussed this evening, any of the other policy and advocacy or annual 2016 questions you have. As a note, as my contact information there, if you think of questions after we've adjourned for this evening, please do let me know.
So, Lauren, just to clarify, for the APhA Institute, we have 275 seats for student pharmacists. They needed to have their chapters fill out a pre-registration form, and I sent out all of the invites to those students who were accepted. And the registration deadline for those students who were accepted is actually tomorrow at midnight. We have 70 students on the wait list ready to take those seats if they're not filled. So I encourage you, if you received an invite, to definitely go to do that. We had a couple questions in regards to where the information is in regards to the Back the Pack campaign. So I'm going to actually steal your screen here, and I'm going to show my screen if you don't mind.
No.
Thank you so much. Everything related to the Back the Pack information is on the APhA-ASP Policy and Advocacy site. So it's pharmacist.com, APhA-ASP Policy Advocacy off of the main site. And if you scroll down, you'll see the information in regards to the Back the Pack. This will pop open to another screen here, and we'll have information related to some of the events that we do, the PAC Challenge. The submissions forms for the chapters, as well as the alumni match form, can be found here. These are due March 1st, as well as kind of an overview of the PAC and some of the information that's available for them. In regards to the Policy Postcard Challenge, the same information is just right underneath that, so it's under the Policy and Advocacy Initiatives. That was a question from Nancy. A question from Shannon White with regards to the APhA Annual Meeting app. So anywhere if you click onto the American Pharmacists Association meeting, which is a separate website, I know it's kind of confusing, than pharmacist.com. If you go here, this is where everything is related to the meeting. One of the things I want to kind of bring to note is under the schedule, if you scroll down a little bit as you go down here is the student pharmacist section. If you click on student pharmacists, this will have all of the information for students. So we've got a schedule in here. It's a 5-page PDF. That kind of walks you through some of the information. We have links to all of our social media outlets that are here. The pharmacist House of Delegates information, on-site events, as well as some of the national officer information is here. But for you, Shannon, who asked the question, to download the meeting app, you click on here, and you can access that through your smartphone, and you should be able to get to that. Now, I don't see any other questions. Lauren, if you've got a minute here, would you mind just talking about each of the 4 policies for like 30 seconds apiece, just to give the audience a quick overview?
Sure. So these are the work of your 8 regional delegates. We all convened in January to go through all of the resolutions that you passed at your 8 regional MRMs. And so I know that you're going to see some ideas that are coming from your region. So this first one, 2016.1, increasing the security of pharmacies. This one is geared to address the startling rise in pharmacy robbery that we are seeing nationally. Student pharmacists have already been the victims of armed pharmacy robbery, and so the Resolutions Committee believed that this was something that we needed to address. 2016.2, pharmacist administration of non-vaccine injectable medications. This is designed to help reduce some inefficiencies in the current healthcare system that require patients to, at times, pick up a medication from the pharmacy and return to their physician's office or another healthcare professional to actually have the medication administered. The Resolutions Committee felt that we are trained to provide immunizations, both intramuscular and subcutaneous injections, and that we do have the ability to administer non-vaccine injectable medications, and that this is an important service that we can provide our patients. 2016.3 was taken up by the Resolutions Committee to address the rise in vaccine preventable diseases. So we have looked at this issue from a couple different angles in order to increase immunization rates and decrease the number of patients who are impacted by vaccine preventable diseases. 2016.4 is increasing patient access to pharmacist-prescribed medications. So this was, more than any of the others, was something that was well represented in many of the regions across the nation. And this is designed to help encourage legislative and regulatory changes that will allow pharmacists to prescribe medications for conditions such as oral contraception, excuse me, I'm still fighting off a cold. Oral contraception and travel medication in particular, and along with smoking cessation. So things that pharmacists are well equipped in our education and training to help our patients in this way, and giving us increased latitude in giving patients access to these medications. So we are very excited to present these in our APhA-ASP House of Delegates this year. I hope to hear all of your voices in the open hearing, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. All right. Let's see.
I've gotten a couple notes in about the form for the postcards. Once we're done here, I will take a look at that to make sure that the form is updated.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for letting us know, guys. We appreciate that.
Doesn't look like we have any further questions or any hands raised.
Okay. Well, with that, I so appreciate your time this evening. Please let me know what questions you have. Also, talk to your regional delegates and policy standing committee members that can help you out as well. And other than that, thank you for your attendance and your engagement. And I'll look forward to talking with you more. See you in Baltimore.